Hey, welcome back everyone. This is Film Audit, a podcast with four college friends with a passion for movies, and we just love talking about them. My name's Jared.
I'm Spencer.
I'm David.
And I'm TK.
And, let's go ahead and jump right into it. How's everyone doing?
Pretty good. It's been a little bit. Sorry about that again.
Yeah, it's been like 3 weeks now.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But starting to heat up here in Rexburg, and it's shorts weather again, so...
Yeah, I don't know. The weather is kind of fluctuating where it's shorts and then it rains in the evening, so it is what it is.
But yeah, we're like halfway through the semester now too, so got some like midterms and stuff, but otherwise everything's going pretty well.
I am just glad it's not snowing anymore.
That's true.
Yeah, right now, technically, all four of us are students. I'm enrolled this semester, but for my internship, I actually started this past weekend, so that's fun.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay, let's start out with what have you guys seen recently? Anything fun, cool?
Yeah, so something that we've actually kind of talked about a little bit in the past, but now the whole series is out and we can actually kind of give our whole full like spoiler thoughts on is Moon Knight, the Disney Plus show, Marvel. I think a couple episodes ago we were talking about like the first 2 or 3 episodes, but we kind of dropped it after that. And I actually only recently got around to finishing the whole show, like sometime a week or 2 ago. And then I think Jared didn't. I think you finished it a little bit after that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I actually I basically finished the show, but I like started watching it with my little brother, and he wanted to watch it only together. And like at one point, I had to like leave, and then we had 10 minutes left in the finale, and then we like couldn't get back to it for like a week, so I just had to wait to know what happened in the last 10 minutes, which is fine. So I finished it a while ago, other than like knowing some of the bigger spoilers and stuff. What'd you guys think of it?
Well, because the last time we talked again, it was like just on the first little bit, and I really liked the first 2 episodes. The first one especially has a lot of like intrigue and mystery surrounding it, and like it sets up a lot of interesting characters, especially like the antagonist. And I think now that I've seen the whole show and the ending, I think that my favorite episode probably is still the first one. I think that it had a very promising premise, but the way that the story is told is kind of jumbled. And so I'm kind of mixed on the whole thing, like the show as a whole. There are parts of it that I really love, and then there are other parts of it that I don't really care for at all. And then especially I think the last episode has a lot of problems with sticking the landing.
Yeah, I kind of agreed too. It was good. I like Marvel things, obviously, but I think it could have done a lot better. The thing about Moon Knight is that he's a really complex character because he's got this DID, dissociative identity disorder. And that makes him interesting and unique from other superheroes. And I feel like they should have leaned into that a little bit more, dealing with that and discovering that. I really liked, my favorite episode was the episode where he was just kind of in his own mind, or going into the afterlife, I suppose, and having to deal with his past trauma. And I felt like it had a lot of good notes in that episode as well. And I feel like almost that every Marvel property nowadays is very similar to the previous one, except they do one thing different. Like it's always, superhero discovers he has superpowers and defeats a bad guy. That's like every single Marvel thing that we've seen so far. And then with Moon Knight, it's a little different because he has DID. And they're just trying to fit these new aspects in, even though it kind of feels really, really, really formulated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially since like the first episode feels very far removed from the rest of the MCU in terms of like tone and like just execution in general. And then by the end, it just kind of devolves into your standard like superhero stuff with like just a very generic villain. And again, that's one thing that is like pretty frustrating for me, is that I really liked the villain. Ethan Hawke. Yeah, I really like Ethan Hawke's villain in the first part because of like his like the ideology that he represents, and he like makes some compelling arguments to Steven, and I guess also Mark. But by the last episode, he's just kind of your average Marvel villain that wants to just take everything over, and there's a giant CG battle. So yeah, I agree. I think it does kind of turn formulaic by the end.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm a big superhero fan, so I really enjoy superheroes and all their adaptations. I can get tired of them as well. They get very samey, very formulaic, and I want to see something new. And I just hope with all these upcoming MCU projects that they start to do that, start to introduce some newer concepts, because the MCU has been around for like over a decade and almost a half. It's been around for a long time, and we've enjoyed it when it was simple superheroes just fighting bad guys. But since they've been around for so long, we've already seen that 1,000 times, and I would like to see something new from them, because I know they could. I know there's a lot of good people working on their teams. They just need to allow that sort of creativity to really shine in their projects.
No, that makes sense. One thing that I really did like with Moon Knight is how at the end of every episode, or most episodes, it left on a big cliffhanger that I really wanted to watch the next episode. So it was kind of like a segue, and also keeping my my attention span and also desire to keep watching the show. Because like a lot of my friends and my family know that I'm a big nerd for like anime and stuff like that. And I don't know what it is with those type of shows. They know how to like grab the viewer's attention, and I appreciate it a lot. Which is why I guess they're really successful in making a lot of seasons and a lot more episodes, keep it going. And for me, Moon Knight was doing that. And like, for example, if you haven't seen the show by now, I'm sorry, but we're going to spoil it right now. When he's in that psychiatric hospital, when he wakes up, I'm like, okay, like, I don't know who the real like owner of Mark or Steven's body is anymore. And then you have like this new character. Who is it? Is it Jake Lockley? I was like, who the heck is that guy? So it left me wanting more. But at the same time, it also gave me a big plot twist, like that psychiatric hospital I was just talking about earlier. So I think they did a great job. Again, it was a bit formulaic near the end, but I still think it's worth a watch. I still think it's up there for this new, what do you call it?
Phase. Yeah,
the phase of Marvel it's in right now. But I'm really excited to see what they're going to do with Moon Knight for upcoming projects.
Yeah. On a positive note, I really like this show, and I like how refreshing it felt at times to like have this kind of character get explored under what felt like creative direction instead of a checklist for most of it. But I was really excited to see them give these two directors a chance to explore Moon Knight as not just like a superhero, but also the character himself having DID. I just really liked where the show was going up until, there's like the jumbled mess of the superhero show. But overall, like, I really applaud them for giving other directors a chance to give us characters that are interesting. And so, of course, Marvel is going to have a lot of like rough edges, especially as you get towards the end of the show. But I appreciate that they gave enough like leeway, to let them not really answer that many questions, to give you a sense or a feeling of how Mark or Steven are feeling throughout the show. And I think Oscar gave a great performance as as both personalities or all three personalities throughout the show. So yeah, a lot of positives for the show, and of course it gets bogged down, but I liked it.
Yeah, that is one thing that I do want to emphasize is that Oscar Isaac's performance is really good, and the way that he's able to just switch between the different personalities like that is impressive and like really compelling. I've liked Oscar Isaac in pretty much everything I've seen him in.
Yeah.
He was great recently in Dune. I really liked him in Ex Machina. He has a small part in Annihilation, but it works really well. And he was probably like the best part, or at least the best like actor in the Star Wars sequels. So
yeah,
he's a really talented guy, and so I'm happy to see him in whatever he shows up in. And he really did, like, you can tell he's trying really hard, and I think it pays off. And I think that that's one of the more compelling reasons to watch the show is to just, you're following a really interesting character portrayed by, a really good actor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And more credit to the writers of the show giving such an interesting character to explore, to give Oscar Isaac a chance to act in this way. But like for me, example is I love when they explore Stephen and Mark's origin of personality after he gets shot and takes time in that hospital that's basically his representation of the afterlife. And so it was really cool to see him unravel why Stephen even exists. I don't know. I love that idea. I know that was the original character having two different personalities, but I liked where they took that and gave a chance to have some emotional moments there. So, yeah, for me, I would give Moon Knight a light 7. It definitely started bogging down towards the end. There was a lot of cheesy things, like, oh my gosh, one that stuck out to me was, are you an Egyptian superhero? Or something? I don't know what that was. That was really cheesy and just the most on-the-nose thing of the show. Followed by other smaller things, but not as big as that one, but still a good show. So, light 7.
I think I would give it like a 3.5. So yeah, 7 too.
Yeah, for me, I think I originally gave it a 7, but the more like I thought about it and sat on it as like a week went by or so, I realized that like it did have a lot of problems, and a lot of what I thought back on the show, like I would remember the really good parts, but then I would also kind of remember this just weird feeling that I got from like a lot of the episodes, and then like how just the way everything wrapped up. So I think I'm gonna have to bump it down to a 6 out of 10, but I still enjoyed it. And it's actually the only other Marvel show that I finished watching besides WandaVision. I watched like the first 3 episodes of Falcon Winter Soldier and didn't really continue, and then I watched the first 2 episodes of Loki and I hated them, so I never finished that. So 6 out of 10.
Yeah, for me, I like the show a lot. I gave it 4 out of 5, so like an 8. Again, it does have its errors, but I just brushed past those. I just genuinely like the show. I think it was cool to have a cool twist on a Marvel type series. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think if Marvel keeps playing into those creative ideas and unique characters, like, they'll go far, because like David said, in the first 2 episodes where they strayed from the superhero formula, that's when it really shined. So hopefully they can learn from this.
You know what they should do? They should like because there's like I'm sure there's some weird superheroes. Because like DC, for example, has one called like Arm Fall Off Boy. I'm sure I've talked to you guys about it a lot. Like if they made a series about that, that'd be kind of funny. Mm-hmm. It might be hard to pull off, but it's definitely on the other end of the spectrum.
Well, he was in the Suicide Squad, wasn't he?
Was he?
The James Gunn movie?
I haven't seen that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
He's Brendan Fraser's character.
Yeah, wait, that's Brendan Fraser?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, he was wearing a mask, so I couldn't tell.
All right. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, you three just recently watched Northman, right? I didn't get a chance to see it, but how was that?
Yeah, The Northman, Robert Eggers' new film, the director of The Witch from a while back, and then The Lighthouse more recently. This was a movie that I wanted to catch in theaters, but by the time we got around to looking it up, it had already left. So the nice thing is it was available available for rental pretty early, actually. it was just a little bit more expensive on Amazon. But so Spencer, TK, and I watched The Northman, and I think we all thought it was pretty good. I think we're all relatively as enthusiastic about it as everyone else. What did you guys think about it, though?
I thought it was fun. I don't know. It was good. A very well-made movie. I think I just expected maybe a little bit more from it, I suppose. I did not expect the movie to take place in one setting most of the time. So that threw me off a little bit. I thought it would be more of like an adventure kind of a movie, but that was also just like a judgment I made before I even saw the movie, so maybe that's on me. But I still enjoyed it, nevertheless.
Right, and I can add on to that. I have never seen another film by Robert Eggers. Eggers. Oh wow. Oh, I'm gonna butcher that. So I can't really compare it to any of his other films, but I can say that this was a good film. I like the story and how it's based on the legend of Hamlet, and it was thoroughly enjoyable to watch and kind of cool to see how historically played out. Because I didn't know that was based off a legend. I thought that was just something that Shakespeare had made up. So
yeah, basically for like quick context for you, Jared, and then for anyone else who hasn't seen it. So the story of the Northman is based on the legend of Amleth, who is this Norse guy that the story Hamlet by Shakespeare is based on. So it plays with the idea of like a murdered father, and then like the child's quest for vengeance against the uncle that killed him. So if you watch it, it'll kind of resemble, on a surface level at least, like Hamlet and like The Lion King in terms of like its story structure, but it's very much like very revenge centric.
Yeah, and I think the first thing you see is like, it was a volcano being erupted. I think that sets the tone perfectly. Color, sound, everything. Because
there's like this low rumbling voice that's like explaining the setting to you.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was, that immediately hooked me in. And that's the beauty of when I watch films. If like the sooner you get me attached, the more I'll pay attention. I can't really describe it.
Yeah, but I love that opening shot. It was great. Oh yeah, if you can do the math, Amleth is Hamlet's, just with the last letter moved to the first.
I love math. Those letters.
So Hamlet is literally Amleth. And Shakespeare, I don't think, cares about plagiarizing at all. But that's fine.
I mean,
he also introduced over 300 words into the English alphabet.
I'm sure he loved, that wordplay where like, just move the letters around and it kind of sounds like a different, different name.
Shakespeare's a funny guy.
But I also really enjoyed it. But I also am kind of in the same camp as Spencer, where I think on a technical level, this is like a masterpiece. Like everything looks amazing. The set and costume design is really good. Robert Eggers has this attention to detail when it comes to like historical settings that's like insane. I haven't seen The Witch yet, but I've seen clips of like dialogue from that movie, and they all talk in that like very old English that like the early settlers would have had, where it's kind of hard to understand because we don't speak like that. And then The Lighthouse also has very authentic sounding like sailor talk. It's also kind of hard to understand. And then this movie, it's in English, even though the characters would be speaking other languages. But it has a lot of attention to detail in terms of like culture and religion, especially. There are a lot of religious rituals that you see in the film, like a man is killed, and so at his funeral, you see the tribe slaughter his wife and his child, I think, too, so that he can die with them. Isn't that right?
Oh, I think that's what happens. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, there's a lot of attention to detail to like the historiosity and the traditions and the myths of the movie. And I think that's one way in which the movie excels too, is that it really treats these myths like reality. Like, it's not just that these characters believe in this religion, they believe in Valkyries or spells. The movie treats that mythology as if it were literal. Like, you see people perform magic and it works.
Yeah.
I guess spoilers for The Northman, but I mean, telling you that it's like Hamlet, you kind of already know how it's going to go down with the mutually assured destruction at the end. But when Amleth dies, you see his soul getting carried away to Valhalla by a Valkyrie on a horse. And it just treats it all as if it's real. And so it's really able to immerse you into the world. And like TK said, from the very first frame, it's able to do that. And so I think for that experience, it's definitely worth your time.
Yeah, as far as like the quote unquote magic goes for this movie, I think it was really unique how they portrayed it, because in modern film, you know, they'll kind of portray magic as very whimsical, colorful kind of feats that people can do. But in this, it was like as if you were there all these years ago and, you know, nothing super spectacular happens, but just enough happens where you might be able to think like, oh, okay, well, maybe she is a little bit magic, you know? Like, it was very subtle, the way they were portraying it. Like, for example, one of the characters poisons one of, like, the pot, and it just makes everybody sick and hallucinate. It's like, okay, well, that could be their magic, but we know that to be like a hallucinogen nowadays. And there's just like some other things like, okay, well, that kind of seemed like magic, but it could also be coincidence.
Right.
But it leaves it enough open-ended where it can allow for some disbelief and also belief at the same time, like a true religion.
Right. And one thing I like about this conversation we're having is the Northman, it's not really seen like the way they're portraying how things were played out. It doesn't seem like it's historical. It doesn't seem like it's like a documentary. It's like you're actually like living it. So you're fully immersing yourself into it, which is something that I really appreciated a lot. I was like, okay, this is actually kind of fascinating. So shout out to Robert for like getting that historical point like intact, or just on point in general.
Yeah.
So I think he did a great job.
Another thing that prevented me from fully connecting with the film is its like emotional resonancy. So it's this revenge story, but it's kind of hard actually to get invested with the main character, because the first time we see him, he's a child, and that's when his father gets killed. First of all, that whole like setup happens very quickly. If you do compare it to a similar story like The Lion King doesn't kill off Mufasa until, I don't know, like at least a third or a quarter of the way into the movie. The Northman, which is well over 2 hours long, kills off Amleth's father very quickly. I feel like it's within like the first 10 minutes or so. So the pacing feels kind of off. We haven't really gotten to see the relationship between Amleth and his father before his father dies. And then on top of that, after his father dies, we have a huge time jump where suddenly Amleth is being portrayed by Alexander Skarsgård. And even though one of the first scenes with him is really impressive, is this really long take where Amleth is with this other band of Vikings and they're invading this town and killing all these people. And it's really impressively done and really well shot action. But it makes us, again, it makes it hard for us to connect to this new version of this character that's now all grown up, because all we see him do is like murder innocent people. And it's kind of hard to get on board. And then again, because of these pacing things, after Amleth's father dies, he's rowing away on a boat to escape his uncle, and he's vowing to the gods that he's going to avenge his father, save his mother, and kill his uncle. And then after the time jump, we've learned that Amleth has kind of forgotten all about this promise that he's made. But then in the next scene after that, he gets confronted by this witch lady. I think that's who
like
she
an
is.
Oracle.
Yeah, like an oracle who, played by Bjork, by the way, who tells him that he needs to recommit himself to this promise that he's made. And so it's kind of this like whiplash of, okay, is Amleth does Amleth have this goal to avenge his father, or does he not? And it flip flops so quickly, and again, we don't really have a reason to like this guy, and so it makes everything that happens just less emotionally impactful. And by the time he finally dies, I don't really feel much for him, despite everything that he and Anya Taylor-Joy, his wife, have been through.
Yeah, spoiler alert, he dies in the end, killing his uncle in the process.
Yep, just like Hamlet.
It was still a fun tale to watch. The action scenes are great. I love them. I loved how, especially, like, they're all like one takes, and you're just seeing everything happen in the background while Alexander Skarsgård, or Amlet, he's just next to the camera, and you're just like seeing his like perspective. Like, he just doesn't really care too much for the violence. He's just there to do his job. Yeah, you know. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Talking about the camera and like some of the action scenes, I kind of felt like it was almost like a third person video game.
Oh.
Yeah.
But
in the best ways, of course.
yeah, in the good ways. But I do really like the action as well too, especially anything that's like Viking media or anything like that. The action is super good because the Vikings were freaking brutal as heck, and they hold nothing back. And I really loved like how it was portrayed here in the movie. Like, Amleth is a beast of a man, and he just mows through so many of these, I don't know, underlings of his uncle, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. You know, another thing too was Amlet, like, when he was with that one band of thugs or whatnot growing up, like, they were like legit like acting like wolves. They would be howling. And like, when he's like trying to be undercover, like, one attempt was to try to like kill his uncle, because uncle was coming around the corner and like the middle of the night with his underlings, I guess you could say. He had his sword ready, but the sword wouldn't like budge from the
because he can't open it during the day.
Was that it?
I think, yeah.
Oh, okay. Now that makes sense. And then like the dog starts barking, right? And starts growling at him. And he just straight up just starts like barking and growling back at the dog. And the dog got scared. And he portrayed it really well. Like you see all the drool coming off his beard.
Yeah, foaming out the mouth.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, dude, this guy's like, that's amazing. Because I'd be intimidated too. Not even as a dog, but as a person. Like, I know you're not a dog, but you're acting like it. You're acting vicious. And
I heard that the, like, I don't know, it's like the manliest movie ever. It makes you like not feel like a man. 'Cause it's like,
I get that.
Bad A the whole time.
Yeah. Something interesting is that we're talking about like the action scenes and the production design, and this is by far Robert Eggers' most expensive movie to date. So The Witch had a budget of $4 million. The Lighthouse had a budget of $11 million, and then The Northman had a budget of $90 million. So he's like working with way more money than he's ever had to work with before. And what's really good to see is that he obviously knows where to put that money. Like, you see all that money on the screen. There are a few parts where like there's some CG that doesn't look that great. Yeah, there's like out of it. Yeah, there's some like foxes that show up that are all CGI, and then there's like a couple blood CGI effects that look kind of iffy. But for the most part, like this, like, again, Robert Eggers really knows like what to do with the money he's given. He has said though in interviews that he probably won't do another movie this size again. He would love to, but you know, the more money you're working with, the more studio interference you're also getting. And he wasn't able to. He was happy with the final cut, if I remember correctly, but he wasn't able to do everything that he wanted the way that he wanted to, and he doesn't like having to compromise his vision. So it's kind of unfortunate that we won't be able to see something this big from him again. But at the same time, you know, if it means that he's going to be more comfortable making what he wants to make, an unpopular opinion that I have is I think I do like this more than Lighthouse. I'm also famously lukewarm on that film. I think that the story is kind of off. And so as much as I think that The Northman has some narrative problems and like some problems with its emotionality and like your ability to connect with the characters, I still think that I did so better here than I did with The Lighthouse.
Yeah, I just speaking about Robert Eggers real quick. I really respect him for that. Like, I would rather watch a movie with a low budget and maybe like some bad CGI or whatever if the story is good and the story he gets to tell is portrayed on screen, and just holding on to his integrity like that. I really respect that because you don't see that a whole lot in big budget films anymore. But
Yeah, you're not going to see him directing a Marvel movie anytime soon.
yeah, I mean, that's fine, but like I still like all his movies. I liked The Lighthouse a lot. Not immediately after watching it. I've appreciated it more when I've let it sit because it's a really weird experience, but I appreciate it for what it is. And I want to watch The Witch, so that's on my watch list. I'm going to watch that sometime. But yeah, I really liked The Northman too.
Yeah, I would see if it looks interesting, and I'll check it out because it's very violent, but it's also just very authentically Viking, and it's got a classic story that you probably already know, but told in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think for me, I would probably give this a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I would agree. I gave it a 7 out of 10 as well.
I think I give it a 8 out of 10.
Nice. Yeah, I'm a little behind on the Robert Eggers ball. I think I'll watch them sequentially, like following his history of making movies. I'll start with The Witch, then I'll watch The Lighthouse, and then this.
Don't do it all in one day, you'll be sick.
Well, yeah, I don't really have a rating. Okay, so let's transition to the next part of the podcast. We have our recommendation this past week, or from last podcast. We had David with his movie Logan's Run. You want to give us a little synopsis?
Yeah, so the synopsis on Letterboxd for Logan's Run from 1976, directed by Michael Anderson, says, in the 23rd century, inhabitants of a domed city freely experience all of life's pleasures, but no one is allowed to live past 30. Citizens can try for a chance at being renewed in a civic ceremony on their 30th birthday. Escape is the only other option. So, this movie kind of popped up on my radar pretty accidentally, actually. I was browsing through a friend's Voodoo account, and I saw it, and I was like, that looks like a really interesting poster. Turns out that my dad actually went and watched it when it first came out, when he was 14 years old, something like that. But it came out the year before the first Star Wars film, and that's crazy to me, because now after having watched Logan's Run, it seems like decades apart from those Star Wars films in a lot of ways.
Yeah, this going off of that, it definitely feels dated. To think to myself, like, as I was watching this, I'm like, wow, Star Wars came out the next year. There are moments in here where, like, some of the stage production stuff was cool, pretty impressive. They did win some awards for that, didn't they?
Yeah, I think they won some special effects awards, which again is like hilarious when you compare that to Star Wars.
Yeah.
But for the time, like, this was a relatively high budget movie, and the effects were pretty novel.
The ones that stuck out to me is, like, when you first start the movie and it's, like, very clearly miniatures.
I loved those. I thought those were so good.
But it was very it was very cute.
Uh-huh.
Like, look at the little cars moving in the tube.
Uh-huh. And it's, like, so obviously miniature because, like, just first of all, just the way that it's shot, you can tell that the trees are just little tiny toys, and then, like, you can't see inside the moving rail cars, and it's like, aw, that's so cute. Like, apparently some of the buildings in the back of that shot are like 4 to 5 feet tall, and then it's really just a lot of, like, forced perspective shots.
Oh, I see.
Oh, that's cool.
It was confusing to me. No, not confusing. When it starts rolling, like, the not credits, what do you call it?
Yeah, the opening credits.
Opening credits, there you go. And, like, it's just, you see, like, the domes.
Oh, uh-huh.
Yeah, that's what I was like, wow, we've really come a long ways with technology.
Yeah.
Because, like, of course, there was, like, a little play miniature, of course.
Right.
So I thought it was pretty funny how they just kept getting closer to it. like, oh.
And the closer you get, the more obviously like it's a miniature because
It just gets really
everything's
blurry.
blurring out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to see like a 4K restoration of this film because
Mhm.
I watched it on HBO Max and it was mostly good, but like I don't know, you can see its age a lot more than you can with like
Yeah.
things that have gotten like HD transfers.
I kind of liked it. Like I like the miniatures because, yeah, sure, it's obvious. I can tell they're miniatures, but at the same time, I can tell that like a lot of love was put into this movie, and I can appreciate that from the beginning. I was like, okay, these people really like what they're making, and they put a lot of effort into it. And like when it's like zooming in on the city, it gave me heavy like 70s Superman vibes with like Krypton, you know, where they zoom in on that dome city. It made me think of that immediately, and so I already had a bit of a little bias towards it going in. I was like, okay, this looks like it'd be good.
Yeah. I think one of the first visual effects shots that you see is after Logan, who is their version of police. They call them
Sandman.
Sandman. He and his other Sandman buddy are chasing down a runner, someone who's trying to escape. And after they kill him, they call for him to be like cleaned up. And this little like this guy comes by on this like hovercraft and like sprays this gas on him. And then you see the bodies start to like decay. And you can tell that it's just like, I think it's like stop motion, but they're like fading between different stop motion. Not unlike the way that they did Theoden's detransformation in The Two Towers when he stops being like old Theoden and becomes new. And like it's really obviously like an effect, but it was also kind of just kind of cute. Like
it's charming.
Yeah, it's charming. It's very charming in all of its datedness. Like I think in every way. Like I love the colorful 70s outfits where nobody's wearing a bra, and then Logan has like Luke Skywalker hair that's like flopping around while he's running.
Yeah.
All right, well, if we're talking about the style, I absolutely love the style in this movie. I loved all of the sets. Like, what happened to like really good sets?
Right?
Yeah, like they were all super unique and interesting, and I feel like older movies just have really, really fun sets because nowadays they rely on CGI so much, and it just kind of feels boring now.
Right. One thing that I learned is that publicity for Logan's Run when it was coming out stated that the sets built for the movie were the biggest and the most expensive made at MGM Studios since like the great musical spectacles of the 30s and 40s. So yeah, this movie like did have a lot of like really cool sets. Like some of it looked kind of corny or empty or like dated, but a lot of them was just like, wow, like this is big. Like they put a lot of effort into like making these worlds and rooms and buildings look like real.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys notice like the artwork that they use in frames, kind of like in old CGI, like when we get a lot of the like olden day overgrown DC, and you get a lot of like artwork that's stitched into the frame.
Yeah, matte paintings.
Mm-hmm.
That I thought that was really charming. I like that.
And you can see you like when they're walking up the steps, you can see that they're like kind of cut out badly on the steps.
Yeah.
Like they're a little bit like red. And it's like,
the vines give it away because they're like different colors, and you can see where they like stitched them together.
Right. And then I don't know if it was like green screens, because I don't actually know when like green screens first started being a thing, but the part when Logan and Jessica are riding in one of those like rail cars, and like you see out the window, and you can see that like you can see artifacts coming through in their shoulders, and like in the back of the car it's like kind of flickering because like some of it's like bleeding into some of the picture for the outside is bleeding into the foreground shots, and it looks kind of bad. But
yeah, no, they definitely use green screen because remember like the big computer at the Sandman station?
Oh yeah.
Yes. Yeah. There's a clear outline around Logan.
Yeah. At least one side of his head because everything's shifted.
And there's like a little bit of a green outline. I was like, oh, that's a green screen right there.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but yeah, that was very charming too.
I found the execution of this movie really charming. You know, like down to the visual effects, and like everything's just a little sloppy, and like even like their like their interactions with digital VFX stuff afterwards, where it's like, oh, we need to add in like the laser shot, or and they react like way late, or just like the way they get hit is just so weird. Like when they're chasing the runners, like the lasers just don't match. I love that kind of like small things. It's like, oh, it's sloppy, but I like it. It's comfortable. It makes me like happy. It's fun to watch and like giggle and have fun with.
Yeah.
What'd you guys think of when they're in like the ice cave and everything starts collapsing and you can just see it?
Oh,
You just see like the video
yeah.
of stuff collapsing over, like
it's like a filter.
yeah, it's like a filter over the footage of the
yeah.
actors.
Okay, that kind of pulled me out of it a little
definitely.
bit.
I was laughing the
Yeah.
whole scene.
Yeah, because they're having to like fake react, and you're literally watching them just stand there.
Yeah.
But it's like
Yeah.
like a laptop filter where they're like, oh, it's around me.
It reminds me of those Indian TikToks where the helicopter shows up and starts like dropping bombs everywhere, and then a lion jumps out. You know, it's like
Oh yeah. Just the memes of it.
yeah, just yeah.
No, I know what you're
yeah,
talking
that every
about.
kid had. Yeah.
I'm just thinking. So like that whole ice cave part, I was already taken aback because like when they meet, there's a robot, also like part human side. I don't know, but his name is Box, and I remember he's like, "What? So what are you?" It's like, "I am more than a robot. I am also and I am also more than a human being."
And I'm more than a combination of the two.
Exactly, yeah. And I was like, "Oh, that's kind of cool." And then like it zooms in on his face, and then you could see the actor who's in the body of of Box. You can see his mouth through the mouthpiece of the robot cyborg, and that
was terrifying.
Yeah, I was like, "What in the world?" Because it looks like this robot it's like a guy covered in tinfoil.
Oh yeah,
at that point.
I think it's like 2 shopping carts that they covered in tinfoil.
Yeah,
It's like, apparently like it was so precarious that if he were to like fall over, he would not be able to get himself back up. So they had like people on standby just in case that happened.
Like, a guy dressed
so
as
funny.
futuristic Thomas the Train Engine or whatever.
Okay, Box's design was hilarious to me. It was a brave freaking choice to make him completely reflective, because I could see the cameraman in certain shots in the reflection of
I
Box.
didn't notice that.
I didn't either, but I kind of want to go back and
As
see.
soon as I noticed he was reflective, I was like, I don't think they have the technology to cut out a cameraman right now.
No, absolutely not.
So I saw the cameraman. I was looking for him too. So, but it was really funny. I can just see him like, kind of like on his knee, like with the camera and the reflection.
Yeah.
It was so funny.
Did you guys notice, like, right before they get outside and they break the water tanks and they're like get on the elevator? They get on the elevator. First off, that was a pretty cool shot there where it's like from
On the
under
bottom?
them and you're looking up.
Yeah.
I liked that one.
I thought that was cool. But then right after, it like cuts to them with like snow powder on them. I'm like, wait, what? And then it's like, oh, we're in snow. It's like, you guys haven't even gone there yet. How are you coated in snow already?
I'm glad you said that.
Funny.
Yeah, because I was also taken aback from that as well. I'm like, where did that come from? Like, is it just that cold that they're still wet and like their hair just got frost tips or something?
Yeah.
You also gotta love that, like, and this is like a recurring thing, but like Logan's reaction to them being in this cold place is like, quick, let's take off our clothes so that we don't like freeze to death.
Oh,
Yeah.
And so they take their wet clothes off and then put on the fur coats. But like this is not the first time, because first of all, like, okay, one, like this is a movie from the 70s and there's a lot of like, you know, sexual revolution stuff going on in like the culture. And then also like this movie does deal with themes of like hedonism and like, you know, like the cost of, you know, living a life of only pleasure and stuff. But like, you know, when he first meets Jessica on what does he call it, on the cycle or the whatever,
circuit.
the circuit, which is basically like, I guess, prostitution or something. He's like, you're beautiful, but you're sad. Let's go have sex.
yeah.
And then,
Like he literally says,
Yeah,
he says that line. He says, let's have sex. Just
Yeah.
out in the open.
and then, but it's like, it just keeps happening. So like, when he goes later to this like, like facial reconstruction place, they're like, okay, we're gonna give you a new face, and he's like, do I need to take my clothes off? And she says, not for your face. And it's like, man, Logan just like wants every excuse to take his clothes off in the movie.
Yeah. The whole Frozen scene is just so, like, I could not help but to laugh out loud because he literally goes, hey, we're wet. Take our clothes off. I'm like, okay. And then they get naked. And you're like, oh, yep. Okay, good job, Logan. And then it's like, oh, wait. We're no longer, like, let's put our clothes back on.
Yeah.
Literally 2 minutes later. So,
Yeah,
like,
it's
there
like,
was
what
no
was the point
point
of
to
that?
put the fur coat on. I'm like, why did we need this, like, minute?
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
it just, it's so funny.
to me, the whole like part of the ice cave, I guess quick like context, I know we're spoiling this movie, but so
We tend to do that.
right, so just a quick like plot synopsis so I can like talk about this part. So Logan is, again, he's a Sandman, so he's part of the police, and he finds this Ankh, the Egyptian like kind of cross-like symbol, and on the runner that we mentioned earlier that they disintegrated. So he takes the Ankh to like the central computer to like kind of have a debriefing, and the Ankh triggers the computer into giving him the special assignment where he's supposed to track down what is called the Sanctuary, which is apparently where all of these runners have been trying to get to, and there's like 1,000 runners that are unaccounted for. And so he's given this special assignment. He's not supposed to tell anyone. So basically, he is supposed to become a runner himself and then find the Sanctuary so that he can then take it down. So he has met Jessica, who also has this Ankh symbol around her neck, which symbolizes the Sanctuary. He talks to her, gets her friends to help them escape. And then at some point, and I guess we'll talk about this because I don't actually know when this point is, at some point it stops becoming a job and he actually is trying to run and like escape from the society. And so the last thing that they have to get to before they go outside is this like ice room. That's like the last thing that they have to pass. But what I wanted to say about the ice room is that that whole part and like box, which is the name of the robot, is just so like unnecessary and hilarious. Just everything about it, like it doesn't add anything. And what's so funny is like after they're outside, Logan is like talking to Jessica and he says, it all seemed to make sense until box. And I'm like, that's literally how I feel. This movie was making sense. And then we get a scene with like a robot guy who freezes people to turn into meat or something.
I think so, yeah.
Because he started talking about like krill,
plankton
and protein.
And it's like, does that mean like the city, like all of the meat in the city are like runners? But like we've never even seen anyone eat food, so it's not like it's like a reincorporation of something from earlier. It's just out of left field. And then I love how Box is like, he's showing them all these bodies, and he just like pulls out these 2 guns. And he's like, I'm gonna freeze you now. And then they just kind of like slowly run away from him, and then Logan points his gun at Box and he shoots him in the chest, and then fire goes off in his side, and then he shoots him in the side and fire goes off in his chest, and it just looks awful. And then that's when we get the effect of everything like falling down and they escape. But that whole part just feels so like needless and weird.
No, I can't add anything more to that. But there's something I want to talk about. It's just the whole concept of the story. Like, I think it's so cool because this is based off a book, if I'm correct. So, like we said earlier in the synopsis, like people don't live to past 30. Like that's just a common rule or just something that they just live by. And like you get to see our main character. Logan, his full name is Logan 5 because when you hit 30, you're going through this thing called being renewed, and I'm pretty sure, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, when you get renewed, in other words, there's this thing called this carousel that everyone in the whole town goes to, and it's for those who have reached the age of 30. They go on this platform and they start floating, in this little dome area, and they just start getting like, they should start exploding, right? But it's nothing graphic. It's just like, just picture fireworks, just coming out of people's bodies, and everyone's chanting for it. And I'm like, this is kind of creepy, but like the concept of it, like the idea is really interesting. So I think the reason why is like Logan and then added numbers because they believe that their renewed version of like their past selves who just died on the carousel.
So I think because the film opens with Logan and then his Sandman friend in like the nursery with the babies, and then I think there was like a Logan 6 in there.
Yeah.
So I think it's just that when you die, you're like replaced, but like there's only one Logan in the whole city, and like when Logan 5 dies, then there will be a Logan 6, and then when Logan 6 dies, there'll be Logan 7.
That makes sense.
And then I think with the renewal thing, because the carousel is its own like ritual. And first of all, I was looking into it, and the carousel sequence is one of the most complex flying wire stunts ever done for a movie. There's like this huge, like intricate contraption that like makes the bottom rotate at the same speed as the wires rotating above them.
Okay, because I was confused about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of... Anyways, apparently that was like a huge feat, and like the most like complicated part of the movie is that carousel scene. But so the carousel is a ritual in which you can be renewed. But one of the things that Logan and his Sandman friend talk about is like they've never actually seen anyone be renewed.
Exactly.
So when they're blowing up, they don't think that they're going somewhere good. I think that they think that that means that they like failed the renewal process, and like renewal is a gamble basically.
I was gonna say, yeah, I think that was probably one of my my favorite parts of the movie. It felt like it set a really great like tone for how creepy of a concept this is, because one of the things I liked about it is like when the carousel ritual starts happening, everyone's like pretty excited, and you're like, oh, okay, like, you know, like I'm pretty sure like people are gonna die, but everyone seems really happy about it. It's like a positive thing. But one thing that like got me is when they start going up, it looks like some of the people are trying to escape. Like they're trying to like not go up, and they're going to the side. And then it starts like taking a turn where everyone's like, go up, everyone, up. And you're like, like the people in their it felt like they suddenly realized like, I want to live. Like I want to get out of this. And so they're like trying to float/swim away instead of going up. And then you just watch everyone just like chanting, everyone go up, come on, you got it. It's like, oh my gosh, this is like really creepy.
Yeah.
And so that I really like that whole scene a lot.
Mm-hmm.
What did you guys like? Yeah, I think for me, the strongest part of this movie is the first section of it where we're in the dome and we're trying to escape, and the concept of him like becoming a runner and getting out. It starts to get weaker for me. Like I started to lose interest once we were outside and just like walking in trees and stuff. That just felt like really like teeth pulling. But other than that, like I had a lot of fun with the first half. So would you guys like? What was some weaker things for you guys?
Yeah, I agree about everything about outside. And I think especially because at first, you know, they're exploring this new world, and so it's interesting, and they're going past all these monuments that you recognize because it's like Washington D.C. And then they finally get to where the old man is, and it just like the story just like grinds to a halt.
Yeah,
and they just have these really repetitive, slow conversations with the old man, and the old man is quoting the T.S. Eliot book, Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats, which you probably know best from being the inspiration for the Cats musical, which is why he's talking about like Jellicle cats, and like a cat has 3 names. Like that's all stuff that's incorporated in the musical.
Oh.
But so that was kind of weird when he started talking about that. But yeah, so that's when everything for me just like gets really boring, and I found myself like getting really distracted. There's like a brief action scene where the other Sandman finds them and like they fight. But other than that, it's just a lot of long conversations about like what getting old means, like what does husband and wife mean, and it's like all stuff that like is like new for these characters because they don't know about these concepts, but it's not explored in a way that makes it interesting for the audience. Because like I know what a husband and wife are, I know what cats are, I know how parenting works, I know, you know, all this stuff, and the characters who don't know what that is don't have interesting insights or reactions to learning about it. So you're just watching an old man deliver slow dialogue about things that are just like very mundane.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Oh, I just wanted to mention the one thing I wanted to point out about that whole section of the movie is like, did you guys notice in the fight scene? So we spend a lot of time in like a Congress building with this old man, and there's like 30 cats in this room, like real live cats. Did you guys notice during the fight scene? At one point after, what's his friend's name?
Francis?
Yeah. Okay. He jumps off of the ledge after he was done having a gunpoint. He jumps off and tackles Logan. Then they do like this weird jump thing where a cat jumps off of a desk and lands on the ground, and they jump into the cat. And you can't see what happens below the screen, but I swear that cat died. Like, 2 full-grown men landed on a cat. Like, it was on the desk watching them fight, and then, like, they're, like, tackling each other over desks, and then the cat jumps down right where they tackle each other over a desk. And I was like, oh my gosh, that wasn't fake. That cat, like, actually died.
I mean...
So, like, you guys definitely should go back and watch that part, because I like, my jaw dropped for all the wrong reasons.
Oh my gosh.
But I was hoping someone else would have caught that.
No, I missed that. What I did notice is, like, when he jumps off the balcony, he's jumping toward, like, he's, like, jumping, like, nowhere near Logan. And then in the next shot, he's, like, right on top of him.
He's, like, on him.
Yeah. That I noticed. I was not watching the cat, though. That's so funny.
Oh my gosh.
I do want to talk about, a weak point. We've pretty much just kind of murdered it to death. But to me, when it gets to the part where they're outside, I was like, oh, it's like an Adam and Eve type of thing. They don't understand anything, you know?
I saw that.
And they slowly start learning. I'm like, okay, that's cool. I'm kind of getting bored. It's like, wait, I can't live a simple and peaceful life knowing for a fact that there are people back there who don't know this and they're just going to keep killing themselves at 30. So I'm like, oh, so he's going to go back. He's like, I'm going to go back. I'm like, okay. And they just rush it. So to me, it felt like, it felt like Treasure Planet in Atlantis. Cause like the adventure, the buildup is amazing. And then like the last act is like rushed. And I'm like,
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I felt similar.
Because they have that epiphany
exactly.
of like, okay, we've made it to the outside world. This is what it's like. And then they're like, okay, we'll go back. And like the way that they get in was confusing because they just swim into the place. Yeah. Like it was so easy it was so hard to leave, but then to get back in was just so easy. Mm-hmm. And so that was really weird.
Remove some grates.
Yeah, it's like, why couldn't you have gotten out that way? Like, why did you have to go up through this like boiler room and then like the fish hatchery? And then like this ice place with Box and his like frozen
box.
people.
The ice box.
Ice. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I felt similar. I was watching the runtime because like I was getting really bored.
Yeah.
Same.
Okay, I'm glad you weren't.
Oh, I was thinking. I'm like, okay, the story has to go somewhere, and I was thinking in my head like, oh, okay, maybe this was this was a time where they were trying to like make the next big sci-fi thing. So I thought like, oh, okay, maybe this is gonna leave it to where there could be a sequel. And it just never happened because it didn't get popular. But then, like, I look at the runtime and we got 10 minutes left, and I'm like, are they really going to do this? And then, like, within 5 minutes, they, like, wrap up the story of, like, he gets everyone out. And I'm like, whoa.
Right.
That was really fast.
When I love how, like, the way that he gets everyone out is first he's, like, yelling at them and they're not listening. And then, so they get captured by the police. He gets interrogated. And then I don't even know. I'm trying to be fair to the movie, but at the same time, why did everything just started like blowing up?
Yeah, that made no sense. Like he started shooting like some of the big weird round circles on like the wall.
Like, and somehow it inexplicably leads to the entire civilization
crumbling,
just exploding, and it's like what? And so that's how he's able to get everyone outside to like meet the old man.
Oh, that makes sense. I was like, did they just swim through the aqueducts and like they're all dry?
No, but
no.
But it still like doesn't really make any sense because just
you never even see them leave a dome. They're
they
just outside all of a sudden.
They just kind of come over the edge of some like hill or something, and they're all just there.
Yeah. And
nobody's rescued any of the babies in the nursery, unfortunately.
I like his line where he's like, "You can live."
Oh yeah, that was crazy.
He's telling the truth.
I would have thought like he would have come up with a really thought out plan to try to convince these people to leave because he's been in their shoes and he would have been hard to convince. Right. And then he just rushes in like that and he's like, "Live," and I'm like, "Really? That's your plan?"
Right.
Okay.
I guess actually going off of that real quick, when you're saying that like he's been in their shoes, one of the things that I think the movie does do interesting at the beginning, and then I think kind of drops the ball on later, is the idea of like Logan's conversion, like out of the cult and like the horrible civilization that he's living in. Because there's a line when he's trying to convince Jessica to help him, and she's like, "Well, you've killed runners before. Like that's what you do. Like why should I believe that you want to run now?" And he says, "It's different now because it's me, my life." And like that's a really like on like genuine reaction, because that's kind of how everyone is. You know, it's like, oh, I don't really care about this until it affects me personally, and then I do care about it. So I like that. But then on the other hand, like I mentioned before, Logan is at first doing this whole running thing as kind of like a ruse to try to find the sanctuary. And you know that for a good long while, he is still on that plan, because when he finds all of the other like renegades, doesn't he like pull out his like phone or device?
Like,
like
taps his device.
Yeah, so he signals for all the other Sandman to come find him, because he's like saying, basically he's saying like, hey, they're all hiding here. Here's my GPS. Come to this location. You can like, you know, take them out. But I guess so. At least at that point, we know that he is still doing this with the intention of destroying the renegades, and he's not actually a runner. But I guess at some point he just becomes sincerely a runner, and like that he and Jessica fall in love, and because we're never able to spend a lot of like alone time with Logan, and he doesn't really voice his like actual thoughts or feelings.
Yeah.
It's very nebulous as to where that character change happens and why.
Yeah. I think it would have been better if they like kind of had his shift start happening when he sees his lifespan go down to 1. Because all of the characters in this movie, they have this crystal on their hand that basically tells them how much time they have left. And when he officially becomes a runner in the system of like, okay, here's your undercover operation, and then he looks at his hand and he's like, oh my gosh, I'm about to die. And like he's like, will I get these years back? And he never gets an answer. I feel like they should have let him start grappling there, because that would have made sense of like, okay, I need to like realize before I had the comfort of having all these years and I could say, let's have sex and, you know, like just do whatever, the luxury of a short life. But now that it's actually almost over, my like perspective has changed. But they just kind of like forget about that, and he still is in this undercover thing. And then all of a sudden it's like, no, I really do care about it. And it's like, oh,
yeah,
okay.
One thought that I had about like kind of reworking the story in that way is, instead of having the computer withhold the information from him about whether they're going to restore his life, I think that the computer should have adamantly said, yeah, we'll restore your life. And then after Logan signals for the Sandmen to come raid the place, he tries to explain to them that this was all an undercover mission from the computer the whole time, but maybe the computer denies that and says, no, like, I didn't put you, we didn't put you in this mission. Like, your life just ran out. And he realized that he's been double crossed. And then that could be when he's like, shoot,
Yeah.
I've been on the wrong side this whole time. And now I'm going to help Jessica for real now, and as many other runners as I can, or whatever,
Yeah.
I think that could have been another way to do that too.
Yeah, I think that would fix a lot of problems that the movie had, because there's, we all had that same thought, like, where did he, like, switch?
Yeah.
It wasn't clear at all, and that should have been, like, a really big moment, but it just wasn't. But I think that would have been a really good moment if he found out he was double-crossed by, like, the computer or something. That would have been pretty cool.
Yeah, and I have no idea how like the book handles it. Apparently, the book was actually only written like 9 years before this movie came out, so it's not like that old of a book. But I'd be interested to see what that did. I guess one thing, if we're talking about the book, there are a few differences between the book and the movie. So in the book, people die at 21, but because they didn't want to hire a bunch of young actors, they changed the age to 30. And then there's a slightly different reason why Logan like starts his mission. It's not just like assigned to him. He has some ideas. Apparently, Sanctuary turns out to be an abandoned space station, and then the novel ends with Logan and Jessica escaping to Sanctuary aboard a rocket that launches from Florida. And then actually, because the movie was so successful, the co-author of the first book wrote 2 sequels, Logan's World and Logan's Search. And And then there were a couple other books and novellas that came out, not written by him. And then I think there was like a TV show that was like a spinoff that came out the year after this. Yeah, I think it ran for like one season. And then interestingly, since the mid 90s, there have actually been several attempts to readapt the source material. And there was one adaptation that was announced by Warner Brothers in 1997, and it was rumored to have Leonardo DiCaprio as the star. But, it's 2022, and obviously we haven't gotten that. So it seems like any attempt at making a remake of Logan's Run is in development hell. So I actually think that, like, because we've all expressed how, like, this movie does have a really compelling premise, and there's some really cool ideas here, but there are enough problems that I would love to see a remake of this. I think this is like prime material for a remake, because it's, instead of trying to remake a hit, which is what Hollywood seems to be doing, the best remakes are of, lesser known movies, maybe with a cult following that, has room for improvement. The Thing was a remake. Yeah. The Thing from the 80s was a remake of like an old 50s movie that wasn't that good. And so John Carpenter remade it, and now that's a classic. So I would love to see this, tackled by a good director.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I think I differ from that opinion. I think, like, we talked a lot about how Logan's Run is very charming in its old age. And I think it's a good thing. I kind of don't want to see it ruined by, like, a lot of the modern CGI stuff. I really liked Logan's Run and all of its practical glory. I really like practical effects, and Hollywood just does not do that anymore, basically. Like, whenever they do it, it's kind of like they're almost like showboating. It's like kind of like
a gimmick.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, look, this is practical. Like in Star Wars, like they'll use like a puppet here and there or something, but then like that's it. And I just kind of don't want to see that happen to Logan's Run. It's very. I feel like a lot of my enjoyment for the movie came from its practical effects.
Makes sense.
And I guess I did have similar thoughts when I was thinking about a remake while watching it. Is that you would lose a lot of like the 70s-ness.
Oh yeah, definitely. The style.
But I also don't think that it's impossible to do well, because I think of, like, obviously very different movie in tone, in terms of tone, but like the original Blade Runner, that movie is like very much an 80s movie with its like synth score, and like there's some really weird ideas in that movie. But then you look at Blade Runner 2049, and it's able to use a lot of the same aesthetics from the original Blade Runner, but tell a story in the modern age. And it's able to pick and choose which stuff from the original is worth keeping and which ones aren't as much. So it still retains that Blade Runner brand and iconography and some of the unique elements from that story, while maybe getting rid of some of the weirder stuff, like, like the Puppet Master in the original Blade Runner and stuff like that. So I think like someone like a Denis Villeneuve, or apparently Alex Garland was like going to write a script for a readaptation of Logan's Run. I think someone like them that do have a unique sense of style would be able to adapt the style from the original 70s Logan's Run, but streamline a lot of the story and make the character beats better. But I also agree, I don't want to just see a generic, like, like the Total Recall or RoboCop remakes, where you just strip it from all of its identity and it just becomes a bland sci-fi action movie from the 2010s. Like, I don't want that.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. But if you're able to get someone that has like a really distinct creative vision that's able to pay homage to the original, I think that would be really entertaining.
Yeah. If they can get somebody to retain its creativity and style, I think it's worth a shot, like Blade Runner, because I really do like Blade Runner, and I think I like Blade Runner 2049 even more.
Oh, yeah.
So...
you used to say about Top Gun, too.
Yeah, Top Gun. Top Gun was another one that... We'll get into that next time, but that's one where the original movie, also from the 80s, is very 80s and has a very 80s aesthetic with its like soundtrack and stuff. And the new one's able to modernize a lot of the things, but still pay respect to
it does good callbacks too.
yeah, callbacks, and like it does use similar music or just similar vibes that the original had.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't completely just modernize everything. So
Yeah. Do we also want to talk about how the main hub of the movie took place in a shopping mall?
Okay, can we also talk about how this dome is literally right outside of DC? Yes, but the shopping mall and the main hub is called the arcade. I thought that was interesting.
and they still have escalators in the year 21 whatever, 22
Yeah.
whatever.
22 something.
Still have escalators in there.
They
Yeah.
look exactly the same to the ones we have today.
Oh yeah.
So innovative. We can say something about our cars. Like not much has changed in 100 years, except like efficiency.
And I thought that was so funny. Like, I talked about how the set designs were really, really cool. That's like the exception.
Yeah. That one almost feels like, well, what do we have access to? It's like, oh, there's this old mall over here. It's like, okay, we'll just do that up.
Yeah.
You know, not change a whole lot. There's some also kind of weird like world building stuff. Apparently, according to the audio commentary in the movie, when the movie first came out, audiences didn't realize that the costume colors represented specific age groups, and I didn't know that until I read that piece of trivia. I didn't realize that like the reds were a certain age group and the greens were a certain age group.
Mm-hmm.
I was very confused when Logan was talking to that like feral 16-year-old or whatever in the cathedral, and he's like, what are you gonna do when you turn this age?
16.
All these kids are gonna tear you to shreds. And I'm like, what? Why? What?
Yeah.
I was so confused. I'm
Can't
so
be in the cool
confused.
club.
Yeah, that was very confusing.
It's like codename Kid Next Door. That's literally what it was.
Yeah, I knew about like the color thing, but not until way later into the movie. Like
What-
the final act.
what
Yeah,
tipped you
yeah.
onto it?
Well, they say it.
Yeah.
In one scene.
Okay, what like first tipped me off was I saw just like the first glimpse that I've ever seen of Jessica's hand, and her thing was green. Her
Right.
hand thing was green, and she was wearing green. And I noticed all of the reds, all the runners, they're wearing red.
Oh my gosh.
And then I started noticing their age differences, and there was like another age below green that were all wearing yellow.
Yeah, I did not pick up on any of this.
Yeah,
while I
it was
watching
not
it.
explained.
That's funny.
I had to figure that out on my own.
I don't know why, but I just assumed that as soon as I saw it, my brain just was like, oh, like especially the shopping or the carousel scene, and then Whistler, if I was just like the shopping mall scene of everybody just walking, I'm like, oh, okay, so these people are probably like the same age, and these people like there's like all these different colors. I'm like, oh, this age group's hanging out with that age group.
Mhm.
I don't know why.
At first, I thought like like the different colors represented different like jobs
That's what I thought.
or roles.
Because the Sandmen were black and white.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the other things I just wanted to kind of just mention is that the opening credits clued me in on the fact that Jerry Goldsmith did the score for this.
I was gonna say that I didn't know if we'd get to it for this podcast, but right off the bat, the first thing I noticed about the movie was I was like, wow, I really like the score for this. And then it doesn't do it for a long time. We get a bunch of like other weird stuff that happens with the soundtrack. But every time it did like orchestral stuff, I was like all for it. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
I really like that. That's cool.
I don't know who it was that was describing it this way, but the score, this is a quote, adheres to two distinct sound palettes, strings, keyboards, and abstract electronics only for cues inside the city, and full orchestra for outside. So you can tell based on the music where the characters are like geographically. And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
I even put that together, but I was like, as soon as we were outside and started doing orchestral stuff, I'm like, oh, we're back to what I liked. I like this
Yeah.
a lot. But yeah, I didn't put that together.
Yeah, Jerry Goldsmith, for those not quite as familiar, very famous and very talented composer. He did the original Alien. He also did, I think, most,
I'm looking at
if
them
not
right now.
all, of the original Star Trek movies. So he's really good. I think I like his work on the Star Trek films and Alien more, but he definitely has a lot of room to play around with like the different weird sci-fi sounds. He likes meddling with avant-garde kind of stuff like he does in Alien. And there's some really weird noises that you hear when they're in the city, a lot of electronic stuff going on.
Yeah. The orchestral parts were stronger for me. My first initial thought, because going into this movie, our precedent was like, oh, this is before Star Wars, a little tacky. But as soon as the score started, I was like, why is this so good? I'm seeing these seeing miniatures, and then this banging score is happening. I'm like, who did they overpay? And I didn't think to look into it because it quickly goes away because we spend a lot of the movie in the city and we don't get that orchestral greatness. But that was my first time. Like, why is this so good? But I'm glad it was someone that's actually good.
Yeah. And then this is just kind of related to the sound. One of the sound design choices that I noticed is that after Logan learns that his life has been reduced, and he's it's kind of dawning on him, and he's walking around in that big computer room, the panels, the electronic light panels on the walls, are making these clicking noises, but it sounds like a clock ticking.
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of it's his life is now ticking down. He's very conscious of how much time he has left. And I thought that was I'm pretty sure that was intentional.
It was 100% because
it better have been, because
if you see if
it worked
you watch
really well.
The lights also, they're moving in a clockwise rotation.
Okay.
They're blinking off
That's
and
cool.
on, and then kind of just keeps going like that around.
Because there aren't a lot of technical things in terms of cinematography that are that impressive. So we've talked about the effects, and those are kind of funny, but I thought that piece of sound design was just really impactful for that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Let's give some ratings. For me, I find that I enjoyed this more than I thought I would, and I'm definitely in the camp of this fan base, if it even exists. It would be cool to see them do this movie again the right way, but again, still love all the quirks and flaws of this one. So I like this. I give it a solid 6.
I think I really enjoyed this too. I don't know. I'm kind of comparing it to the scores we just gave for the other things we watched.
No, don't think about that.
Okay. But I really enjoyed it, and I loved all the practical effects and the creativity that went into it, and the dedication that these people went through. And so I want to give it a 7. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10, so a 3.5 out of 5. Mm-hmm. And do not remake this movie unless the main place is a shopping mall.
I think originally I was leaning toward a high 5 out of 10, but talking about it and just reliving my experience with just all of the quirks and yeah, it's really corny, and there's a lot of stuff we didn't even talk about. There's a scene in this brothel place that is slow motion and super trippy with all these naked people everywhere. It's so weird, but it is really charming. So I think I'm actually going to have to bump it up to a 6 out of 10.
For me, it's kind of tough. I'm not really one for sci-fi and stuff like that. The older it gets, the harder it is for me to get my attention. I love the plot. It's a great story. I give it that. But I don't know. I think I'm going to have to stick with a solid 5 out of 10 for this one. I'm not saying I hate the film. I think it's a great film, but it's not one that I would go to. That's not my genre, So it's not really my cup of tea, but I thoroughly enjoyed this film. So
yeah. Awesome. Yeah, for all you listeners out there, this was a fun one. So if you want to check it out, it's on HBO Max. Moving on to the next part of the podcast, we have a recommendation, but this week we have a special guest giving it. Turn the time over to David.
Yeah, so in the next episode, we're actually going to have my brother Aaron on, and he has asked that we watch Simone from 2002, directed by Andrew Nicole, who you might know from Gattaca or In Time, Lord of War, or The Host. So, pretty well-known sci-fi director. And this is another science fiction movie, drama, starring Al Pacino and Rachel Roberts. So, I think this is one that you're going to have to rent. It's not available on any streaming service, but it looks very interesting. It's got pretty mixed to negative reviews on Letterboxd, but yeah.
Do you know what your brother thinks about it?
No. He explained that he first watched it on a bus in Mexico with Spanish subtitles, and so he's never really watched the whole thing, let alone in English. So this is kind of a chance for him to revisit something that he's kind of always had in the back of his mind, and something that I had never heard before. If you're looking up the movie, the I in Simone and the O is spelled with a 1 and a 0.
So it's like coded.
Okay, that's fine.
So it's like so it's like binary code. So it's S1M0NE by Andrew Nicole from 2002.
I'm really liking this theme we've been getting on the podcast with some like intriguing left turn movies that we wouldn't think to watch. I hope you listeners are having fun with it too. But yeah, I'm excited for this next one. That's cool. I've never heard of this movie once again.
Neither had I.
That's cool. Why is Al Pacino in it? I guess we'll find out. Okay, well, thank you guys for listening. This has been a fun one. I guess we'll end the podcast here. Thank you all for listening.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Laters.
See ya.